This video will cover every team's offensive and defensive ratings and how it improved or worsened since the start of the season. At the end, I'll also cover the first round playoffs to look at the strengths and weaknesses comparing the opposing teams. First, we'll look at the power ranking. This is the power ranking of every team for the WNBA 2024 season. These numbers for each team are based on their ELO score, which represents how well they're performing. Every team starts at 100, and as they win or lose, their scores go up or down. The scoring system adjusts and give you more points for beating opponents better than you and punish you for losing to opponents worse than you. As you can see, the ELO score matches pretty closely to the final standing for each team. There's a couple of observations. Liberty, Sun, and Lynx hold the top 3 spots consistently. Fever, on the other hand, started very low but dug their way back up. Since the 40th game of the season is mostly inconsequential and most starters are given rest, I have excluded them from my final analysis. Next, we have offensive rating, which is a measure of scoring ability adjusted to possessions. There's many ways to calculate this. My approach is to track the offensive rating, but also include the opponent's data. One thing I want you to pay attention to is to watch your favorite teams and see how they've changed over the season. Now let's see who's improved. When we look at the offensive ratings and compare the first 10 games to the last 10 games of the season, these are the results. Storm and Fever improved dramatically, whereas Sky, Sun, and Dream all dropped off quite a bit. Next, we look at the defensive ratings. One thing to pay attention to here is that the higher numbers are bad. Higher defensive ratings mean that you're giving away more points to the opposing team. Again, my defensive ratings adjust for the opponent. Once the season ended, one thing you'll see is that again the Fever was by far the most improved team, whereas most teams got worse. Next, we'll slice the data and look at offensive ratings, but only for home games. The reason this is important is because it will affect teams during the playoffs. We can see which teams are more dangerous at home versus away. Indiana again improved, and Sky got significantly worse in their home offensive ratings. Now we'll look at home defensive ratings. Again, higher is bad. One more time, Indiana improved the most. Perhaps most interestingly though, is that the Connecticut Sun got much worse in the last 10 games at home defensively. This could be good news for the Fever since the Sun will host the Fever for the first 2 playoff games. Now we'll look at the away offensive ratings. Again, the teams that's performing worse than expected is the Sun. We'll see how this will play out later. Now we'll look at the away defensive ratings. In this case, almost everyone performed worse. Could it be fatigue? The last major chart we'll look at now is the momentum chart, which maps the last 10 games to see if certain teams are trending up or down. Higher value here means that the team is getting an increased probability in winning games due to sheer momentum. What's interesting is that the Mystics was actually rising quite a bit and was so close to making the playoff. The Aces slowed down mid-season but started picking back up again near the end, whereas the Sun and Fever are pretty close overall. Now we'll sum it all up and look at the playoff matchup advantages. I've sliced the data even further and compare the specific matchups between these teams. The New York Liberty will take on the Atlanta Dream. Remember that in WNBA, playoffs first round is just 3 games, 2 games at the higher seed and then the 3rd at the lower seed. This means that it's unlikely to make it back to Atlanta. Similarly, Lynx are clearly dominant compared to Mercury. We don't expect much of a shakeup here. Sun and Fever matchup is actually quite interesting. Sun has a huge advantage at home. If Fever can secure 1 win away though, they would have a chance at winning the series. Lastly, Aces and Storm are closer than you'd expect. We do expect the Aces to win, and surprisingly, the Aces have a great chance being away, so even if they lose 1 game at home, they could still take the series. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a huge amount of data to look at. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe, and share a comment. Thanks for watching.